Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be checking out the World of Forever Winter uploaded by Kilpo here on YouTube. Yes guys, now I'll say right off the bat, a lot of you guys have been recommending this video over the last week or two. I've had recommendations to check out Forever Winter, I guess ever since we started reacting to videos on the channel, to be completely honest with you. Just haven't checked any out because it wasn't a whole lot of people, but now a lot of people are recommending I check it out, so we're here to see what it's all about. Now, I don't really know anything about Forever Winter. I've not checked anything out about it. To my knowledge, just from like the thumbnails and like I guess the brief bit of reading I guess I've done, it seems like a dystopian kind of like post-apocalyptic setting in a way. I'm not really too sure what's encompassed in it. I'm not really sure what's talked about. I don't know the cause and effect of the world, I guess you could say. So we're really going to be going in here blind, learning about it here together. So if you guys enjoyed this reaction, hit that like button as always, subscribe if you're new, of course, join our Discord if you're not in, and of course, a big thank you to all of our members. Now, without any further delay, I say we, of course, leave a like here, captions on, quality is 1440p, sync, we're full screen. And without any further delay, guys, let's see what this is all about, the World of Forever Winter.
The Forever Winter, a hellish dystopian nightmare of totalitarian regimes, horrific biological amalgamations, and massive war machines fighting over the
Captions are not on. I apologize. There we go.
Biological amalgamations and massive war machines fighting over the ruins of what once was. In this grimdark future,
looks like Mech Warrior a little bit, actually.
AI and the advanced technologies that come with them, the fog of war remains heavier than ever. For the echoes of the first days of the war still linger, even 40 years later. That being, the first casualties were not the high commands of the factions, nor were they the billions of people who perished in mere hours. No, the first casualties of the war was globalization, plunging the world into a new dark age. Not based
Could've told you that one for free.
But a harsh new reality where the world fell silent. Centuries of infrastructure undone. Long-range communication, now a distant memory. Messages, now whispers upon the global stage. In this video, we'll try and lift this veil, zooming out from the local conflicts of the game and onto the grand stage. But before we do, a recap, covering what we know thus far. The conflicts within the Forever Winter take place during the latter parts of the 21st century. The exact year lost to us. Within this war, there are three major factions, though only two sides. Europa against Eurasia and Eruska. Europa is a
everything's got Eura in it.
Power comprised of North America, parts of South America, and Western Europe. They embody the worst of what once was. Disease, pollution, famine, civil unrest put down by their military police state. Overcrowded hives of people, jailed in all but name.
God damn, I think they just described like the Chinese right there in a way, did they not? Like, holy shit. Like I was expecting this from elsewhere, but let's see what's wrong with
overcrowded hives of
I guess Eurasia and whatnot then.
All but name. They fight a defensive war with the weapons and doctrines of the past. A technological stagnant faction relying upon their vast pools of manpower and combined arms. Eurasia, a global corpocracy, is a modern-day serfdom hidden by the grandeur of logos and marketing, embodying
Cyberflesh
what is. Located in Central and East Asia, they are an advanced faction utilizing their technology in the biological and agricultural fields to not only embrace this new hellish future, but thrive in it.
Really? Their
society is to some extent a contradiction. A utopia with bountiful food for all, yet plagued by wealth inequality. An exquisite facade built by marketing, slowly being peeled away to unveil the rot within.
It seems very, what's the word? I guess like opposite compared to like the modern day setting, or obviously like IRL setting, where obviously, you know, we have, you know, advanced capitalism, you know, showing like basically Eurasia just described like in a way like modern day capitalism in the Western world in a sense, right? But it's obviously Eurasia, China, India, those countries that are being affected by this versus America and the Western world as a whole are the stagnant not advancing, polluted, like dirty places, right? So damn, it seems like very, very opposite in a way. I'm going to be interested to learn here what exactly caused all this.
To unveil the rot within. In its military, Eurasia abuses this inequality to its advantage. Gang pressing the poor, refugees, or those enthralled by marketing into their ranks.
That makes sense.
The horror does not stop here, as these conscripts are converted into
what the fuck are those up there?
Eurasian army, cyborgs.
Oh my god.
Of corporate parts replacing bone and muscle, flesh and blood, and even going as far to strip away free will.
Jesus.
Yaruska
those are
is
scary.
The most unknown of all the factions, but
Yaruska.
for good reason. They embody the worst of what can be. A future of dark biology and technology. Science so far gone it has become indiscernible from magic. They are comprised of the former Slavic states and parts of Africa.
Damn.
And work in tandem with Eurasia, being a direct beneficiary of their advanced technologies.
In a way, that kind of reminds me of, if you guys have seen the movie Hardcore Henry, in a way. The whole plot around that, well, not the whole plot, but like the reason why they do resuscitation and why they do experimentation of cadavers and whatnot in Russia specifically is because Russia does not have laws, obviously in that world, right? Does not have laws regarding the resuscitation of cadavers, and it doesn't really have a limit on the research that you can conduct, right? As long as it's for a good reason, there's not really any sort of ethics there that you could cross, you know what I mean? So I've definitely heard of like the whole idea of like the Russian, I guess, like state and its allies, I guess, in other media, not really putting a cap on what they should be, you know what I mean? So I'm sure that leads to some really dark shit. Let's see here. Those cyborgs from Eurasia already looked fucking mental, and I would not want to face those down. So I can't imagine what Yaruska is pushing out here. Let's see.
Beneficiary of their advanced technologies. It is from them that we see the horrors of the mothers and the brutal animalistic grabbers.
What the fuck am I looking at?
Organic and technologic, forcibly evolved into creatures of this new future.
My god.
Driven by the corrupted logic of artificial intelligences.
Looks like Asian
gone rampant.
Symbols on his arm there as well.
The exact history and timeline leading up to the conflict is lost to time.
Okay.
Scorched into ashes and scattered into the winds, like so much else of the world. What we do know, however, are the circumstances. Europa and Eurasia at each other's throats. Burgeoning populations. Sprawling megacities suffering from disease, famine, and their own police states. A global arms race between two superpowers and their insatiable hunger for resources to feed into the maws of the Cold War. No one knows who fired first, and in the end, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Europa invaded Central Asia. Eurasia invaded the west coasts of the Americas. Nukes flew, entire cities laid to waste. Commanders and politicians wiped out by the very Armageddon they wrought. In this apocalypse, nothing would be spared. For a long
Yeah, I assume, like, again, depending on exactly how bad it was, right? This is the unfortunate part. The same people who are starting these nuclear wars, right? Unfortunately, they're going to be the ones that probably die in the opening blasts, right? Like, again, you're targeting all of your enemy's strategic locations, tactical locations, but above all, their leadership. You know what I mean? If you can take out the head of the snake, the rest falls, kind of thing, right? So each country, each, I guess, faction is going to be targeting the leadership of the other. Who survives? Maybe somebody, maybe no one. Whoever does end up living is going to be a lot better off, but no one is going to be fucking unscarred from this. An attack after the fact probably wasn't even possible, you know, even if any leadership did actually survive, I had to assume.
In this apocalypse, nothing would be spared.
Yeah.
For along with the Earth, the skies were sundered. Orbital installations and satellites obliterated in nuclear detonations across the skies.
Goddamn.
The finality of this bearing implications for eons to come. The Kessler effect in full force. Humanity now constrained to its tomb world, performing its own burial rites.
Kessler effect.
Though inertia is a
Somebody let me know the Kessler effect. I feel like I've heard that before. Does it have to do with like stagnant orbit or something like that? Somebody let me know specifically. I could be wrong. I've heard that before, but I don't exactly know what it is. So somebody please explain that to me.
Performing its own burial rites. Though inertia is a powerful force, the full weight of two warring giants set in motion, even what should
does
be
look
the
very
end of
Mech
all
Warrior-esque, I have to
capitulates
say.
it. And here we are, 40-odd years later. The factions reformed around the rebar of the world laid bare. Task-based AI designed to win a war against its peers. Puppeteers performing for death itself. For these AIs do not know peace, nor do they know governance.
I see.
They're builders incapable of understanding their own fragility, always thinking they would be around to pull the plug.
Yeah, it's like a forever war thing. Okay, I see.
So the war wages on.
That's shitty.
Not because it should, but because it must. The remnants of humanity cling to the terrible rotten remains of the world, it being the only thing keeping them from the abyss, the endless void of extinction. Because any future is better than that, right? That brings us to the current day.
So that's very interesting too. I've heard, well, I can't remember. There was this one Flash game. I think it was called like literally like, This Is Forever Winter. I think it was literally called like Forever War or something. And it was a concept that was introduced to me, I guess, when I was still young, like 5 or 6, playing like Flash games online. But the concept of, right, that an AI, right, eventually will be made on behalf of humans, right, or multiple AIs. And then eventually, long after humans are dead, potentially, right, if these AIs do ever go to war or humans give the order to go to war, what happens after if all those humans are dead and no one can call off that war? Infinite war. It's an infinite stalemate, machine against machine. What does the outcome of that look, right? It is just literally a tomb world at that point. War is inevitable. No one is ever going to be there to make peace. These machines know nothing but miscontempt for each other, right? It's actually a really kind of fucked concept. And again, if you're a survivor during this mega war, right, this never-ending war, it's literally just about survival. How do you survive in that world? And shit could happen at any point, right? Like, who knows if this AI is constantly evolving, constantly making equipment of the same technology when the war started or worse, right, at this point, right, as it evolves. Who's to say another nuke doesn't just land on your doorstep one day? Crazy shit, man.
Than that, right? That brings us to the current day, late in the 21st century. Most of the world has been plunged into darkness with the loss of long-range communication. The only transfer of information pieced together through shorter-range methods and messengers.
I see.
The information void forces a doctor into producing what you can, not what you need. And the AI-run factories are happy to oblige, pumping out endless volumes of ammunition, supplies, war machines, and weapons.
Jesus.
Shipping them off to not where the war is, but where the war was. Potentially operating with up to 40-year-old information.
Yeah, that's fucked,
the conflict
wow.
zones now frozen in time. Rebuilt in the dark interludes between battles by the AI-driven night shifts, so they can be torn down once again in the coming day. Within these local conflict zones, the fog of war leaves local commanders and virtual intelligences to their own devices, acting with limited information in their small spheres of influence, an isolation some have embraced. Rumors of rogue intelligences, corrupt commanders turn warlord, using their authority and knowledge of resupplies as a means of control, turning soldiers into tools for wherever their motivations now lie. Though no one, even the warlords or VIs, have a complete picture of what is happening, and who ultimately is giving the orders, if anyone.
And I noticed too, he said VIs there, not AIs, right? So we're talking about virtual intelligence, not artificial intelligence. So this isn't to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, right? This isn't a self-learning AI. This is an AI that has its own framework. It is not adaptive, and it's going to stick to that framework. It's going to stick to that programming no matter what, hence why you'll probably never get any sort of diplomacy, any sort of peace reconciliation, nothing like that, right? It's not a entity that is capable of reasoning. It's an entity that was designed to create a purpose or created for a purpose, a specific purpose, that basically does have an on-off switch, essentially, right? God damn, and no one's obviously there to hit that off switch. And that's probably a much like simpler way to put it in a way. But I if I'm not mistaken, I believe that's kind of how it is. God damn.
And who ultimately is giving the orders, if anyone. And so this ends what we know thus far.
Past this point of speculation. Okay.
Speculation of what might be, not what is.
Okay.
40 years of war.
Fate of the world.
One nuclear Armageddon, and decades of stripping the Earth bare. Such actions inflict a wound so deep upon the planet it may never heal, and now it is festering. In this section, we will cover the lands, climates, oceans, and skies on a global scale, theorizing upon what ruin has come to the world.
Looks like quite a bit, goddamn.
The effects upon the lands and climates are the most well known for the discussions in this section, with the primary contributor being nuclear war on a massive scale. Bombs kicking up a planet's worth of black soot into the skies. The world quickly plunged into a new artificial ice age, with temperatures dropping between 5 and 15 degrees centigrade. Entire harvests freeze. Rain is not only reduced,
Sorry about
but
that,
now
guys.
harbors ash and toxins.
Blow my nose is running there.
Poison across the land. Vegetation dies, and the breadbaskets of the world turn into vast deserts. Dust bowls on a global scale. Wildlife is not only hit hard in this scenario, it is exterminated. Mass extinctions of entire food chains, rendering whole geographical areas lifeless barrens, never to fully recover.
I could assume, and I would assume I'd go even further and say that the oceans themselves are probably, 80%, 90%, maybe even more. Less fruitful than they were post or pre-war, I guess, at that point, right? They just mentioned mass starvation, right? And obviously the world's oceans, for a lot of nations nowadays, right, is one of the biggest food stores, right? But, you know, obviously besides breadbasket territories, such as like, let's say, for example, Ukraine, you know, many parts of Canada where you can grow you know, grain in mass quantities, right? Those lands are obviously dead, so second would come the ocean. I'm assuming that the oceans are just as dead, man.
The equatorial regions might be the best off of all.
Oh, really?
Though have their own difficulties. Weather becomes hard to predict.
Oh,
Mother
yeah, I
Nature
imagine.
Scorned, and her lashing out erratically. Worse yet,
Hurricanes
a
would be
refugee
insane.
crisis on a global scale. Mass migrations to warmer areas. For a war whose roots started in a resource conflict, it could only get worse. Despite these difficulties, the geopolitical behemoths persisted, their faces bloodied, but their rule absolute. The nukes stripping their societies down to its artificial bones, which the survivors cling to for some semblance of order. In normal circumstances, 10 years after nukes, the soot will begin to settle.
Right.
The skies peeking through once more. Though, this is likely not the case. Not here. The war machines still churn, spitting in the face of Armageddon. Automated factories pumping more ash into the skies. Even now, 40 years later, storms of ash and soot still rain from the heavens. For the regions far outside of the equator, polluted ash-laden ice scours the landscapes, covering it in a frozen hellish expanse, spreading well into our next section, the oceans.
Yeah, here it is.
Much like the lands, the oceans
Tainted.
are irreversibly changed by the nuclear winter.
No doubt.
While some speculation...
I just figure, again, with all the ash, soot in the air, but especially radiation as it falls, especially in mass quantities, the oceans would have been the first to be fucked, you know, obviously besides a nuke hitting the patch of ground that it lands on, right? The oceans would have been tainted immediately. Like, it's unfortunate, but yeah.
Oceans are irreversibly changed by the nuclear winter. While some speculation may point to dried seas, the ocean's total evaporation, this is highly unlikely outside of other fictional events. A world potentially in this state could not even support the limited life there is now.
Yeah.
With the temperature regulating properties of the vast oceans pivotal to life.
There's got to be some oceans.
Leading to blisteringly hot days and forsaken cold nights. In this world, this forever winter, these oceans suffer the same fate as the lands, polluted and frozen. Outside of the equatorial regions, the oceans are swollen with ice, making the seas dangerous for vessels that have not yet adapted to this new reality. Both the Arctic and Antarctic expand, stretching outwards as they consume the now frigid waters, their ice sheets growing year on year, opening a myriad of new possibilities, like ice bridges between the continents. The Bering Strait, now once again an ice bridge connecting Russia and Alaska.
Interesting.
The Deadly Drake Passage, plausibly frozen, combining the land masses of the Americas and Antarctica.
Wow.
So cold this new age could be with the nuclear fallout and the industry of war, that ice could even stretch as far as New Zealand and Australia.
God damn.
They're unlikely, and they're
I'm not gonna lie, at first when they said like the oceans might have dried up, the first thing I pictured was Australia, and I just pictured it looking like fucking Mad Max, dude. Like literally like Mad Max. I was like, God damn, that place has got to be some fun, right? Like, holy shit. But no, okay, fair enough.
And Australia, though unlikely and their permanence questionable.
Mad Max, but colder.
Perhaps providing only seasonal routes. While this speculation opens new possibilities, it also closes many doors. With the ocean's ecological collapse between the ash-laden skies, toxic runoff, and the disruption of currents. Phytoplankton, the building blocks of the ocean's ecosystems, and the Earth's oxygen diminish, killing off the upper echelons of food chains. Meanwhile, coral reefs, obliterated by the quick change in temperature, take the vast diverse life they support with them. Lastly,
coral reefs would die instantly.
Oceans, the currents break. Their vital role of distributing oxygen and nutrients between the ocean's many layers, creating vast underwater deserts, ecological dead zones mirroring the now barren breadbaskets of the world.
Damn.
Though, in time, as these sullen skies begin to clear, the soot settling and the sun emerging, the plankton bloom once more, providing vital oxygen for the world. The damage...
I won't lie, if the sun did start clearing up en masse and the world did start to warm a little bit more, I guess a little bit more, I'm not really too sure what the average temperature of the world is. I don't know if that's been said yet. But I imagine plankton, right, actually does excel in those types of environments, those harsh environments, right? So in a way, if the sun did start coming back, phytoplankton would absolutely just take over the ocean, which would lead to a lot of green, possibly coming back. Now, I can't speak to how quickly that would happen. Obviously, in span of evolutionary terms, it took a fucking really long time to happen here on Earth. But with those, I guess, species already existing potentially, it might return a lot quicker. So that's interesting.
Once more, providing vital oxygen for the world. The damage done, however, is realized. The plentiful seas that once harbored so much life, now quiet outside the creaks and groans of ice. While the lands and oceans have adapted to their new reality, broken and reforged, the same cannot be said for the skies above.
Oh. Still smog infested?
The skies above were not spared during the first days of the war gone hot. Every satellite, every orbital installation, targets of massive strikes, the destructions of which caused a cascade, the Kessler effect in full force. That being the wrecks and debris of these now destroyed installations fill the orbits above the Earth, a deadly maelstrom of shrapnel. Back in the atmosphere, massive clouds of
I see. Okay, so that's the Kessler effect, right. Now, I've actually... In terms of the Kessler effect, I guess, in terms of there being mass amounts of debris in orbit, whatever have you, right? I think it's been talked about before, but it's kind of like almost a myth in a sense, right? To my understanding, right? Yes, it's true that there's a lot of garbage up there and there's only going to get to be more garbage up there for sure. But people forget, right? When you go into orbit, you're now talking about a kind of like a 4-dimensional almost like plane of existence, right? There is a lot of fucking space up there. And the higher and higher and higher you get from Earth, the farther out of orbit you get, guess what? That space just multiplies fucking infinitely, right? So when people talk about there being a mass amount of debris in the Earth's orbit, I think, and I think Elon Musk has even explained this, right? He's like, yeah, it's not really a problem when you think about it, because it's just like go a little bit further away from Earth, infinite space. You know what I mean? Literally infinite space. So I don't know how true that is. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, of course, but that's just what I've heard.
Shrapnel. Back in the atmosphere, massive clouds of radioactive dust and soot darken the skies and choke any aircraft that dare flight, with such a state rendering airborne trade routes impossible for years to come. Collectively, they create a nightmarish scenario. The infrastructure of the old world disconnected and broken. The world gone dark. Calls for help, fading, never to be answered. Akin to the lands and oceans, the skies and space will forever remain altered by the war, though their usefulness returns rather quickly. Even with the industry of war bellowing smoke into the skies, in the following decades it clears, able to be traversed once more. For space, things are a bit different. The Kessler effect creating an orbital debris field lasting for eons. And while the denizens of Earth are now stranded within their tomb, over the course of 40 years, they can reach ever so slightly outward, the lower orbital rings of debris dragged down by natural decay. In time, these lower orbital rings could be utilized by installations and satellites once more, though precarious and requiring adaptation and planning. This is somewhat reinforced by ammunition and war gear referencing its production in low Earth orbit and microgravity.
Oh, that's cool.
However,
9x19 millimeter, made in Neos EA. So I'm guessing that's I'm not sure actually. I was gonna say like artificial environment, but EA, I don't know what that means. Manufactured 2222. Expiring none for that 9x19, but made in lower orbit. Interesting.
production in low Earth orbit and microgravity. However, automated launch facilities could continually add fuel to the debris field, and purposeful sabotage by less space-inclined factions could easily keep even the lowest orbital rings of Earth laden with debris. If the Kessler effect does remain a problem in the lower altitudes of orbit, the solution is high atmospheric platforms, taking the shape of balloons, solar-powered aircraft or drones, or massive airships like Zeppelins.
What is that, a
While
dirigible?
they could serve a variety of purposes, one of the most important would be that of telecommunications, fulfilling the role of previous satellites now stricken from the sky, providing valuable up-to-date intelligence on the movements of the war. Altogether, the lands,
And that's the thing too, without any sort of information, right? These VIs are essentially fighting a war, and they have no idea how the front line is changing at any given time, right? So it's fucking crazy to me. Like, again, like they are literally back in the Stone Age, even though they're still so technologically advanced in a way. It's really backwards, but it's a very interesting concept at the same time.
of the war. Altogether, the lands, oceans, and heavens combine into a new world, one encased in toxic ice and barren deserts, entombed by their own violence. But on a much smaller scale, let us now see how each continent fares, and theorize the conflict zones they contain. Thus far, the continents in the Forever Winter are shrouded in mystery, only lightly covered in lore by the major factions that inhabit them and the items and characters within the game. And working with this, and a heavy dose of speculation, we start in Africa.
Okay.
The continent of Africa, the cradle of humankind, suffers a similar fate it has endured for much of modern history, that of appropriation and exploitation. The little we do know about the continent is parts of it are aligned with Eruska, and that Lordos, an Orgamech, was deployed to Algeria in a demilitarized zone.
Okay.
From this, we can surmise that either Morocco is European or its entire country is part of this DMZ. Alternatively, if grand megastructures exist within the Forever Winter, one possibility is the damming of the Mediterranean, vastly lowering the water levels while also providing power for industry. If this dam does exist, and the land it exposed is incredibly important to both sides, the basin could be one expansive DMZ bridging European-controlled Europe and Eurasian-controlled North Africa.
I see.
If at the beginning of the war, nuclear strikes or the newly frigid climate destroyed the dam, it could create an interesting environment with the newly reflooded Mediterranean.
And see, that's the thing too. I'm not entirely certain, I guess how you would say, what their... I know obviously it happened, I guess, in the early 2020s, like mid 2020s, something like that, right? Or not 2020s, the 2000s, I should say, correction. But I don't know what their, I guess, like baseline of technology was prior to that. I guess obviously they had VIs, they obviously had massive implements of war here. I think I'd have to kind of experience it for myself, see a little bit more to kind of get a better gauge, better understanding of exactly what technologies are possible and exactly what's, I guess, feasible in this world. You know what I'm saying? Because very interesting to learn that they have like mega structures already. You know what I mean? Like the Mediterranean could have been dammed off. You know, that changes stuff, knowing that they could have had constructs kind of like that in a way, right? Means they're a lot more advanced than, you know, like I guess we would be nowadays in a sense, right?
It could create an interesting environment with the newly reflooded Mediterranean, that of a modern-day Atlantis, spires rising from the sea. The current conflict zones in Africa remain concentrated in these northern parts, such as the areas around Gibraltar and the borders of Egypt and Jerusalem, where a European megacity remains. Depending on the state of the Mediterranean, this entire region could form a massive conflict zone, battles erupting between the spires of New Atlantis or across the exposed seabed of the drained basin. Heading south toward the equator, the next biggest landmark within Africa would undoubtedly be the Sahara.
Right.
No longer an endless stretch of desert, but one of massive constructs and machines dredging the sands, cracking into one of the few areas not heavily exploited in the centuries before.
That makes sense.
Unveiling massive deposits vital for feeding the maws of industry.
A lot of people don't realize it, right? But yeah, Africa is an extremely rich country, and despite how much over the past, well, I guess not past few centuries, quite a few centuries at this point, right? How much has been exploited from Africa, the land beneath it is very, very valuable. People forget how big the fucking continent of Africa is. It's gigantic. There's so much shit. There's so much land. And the vast majority of it, at least in our modern day, we don't even have surveys fucking on the land. You know what I mean? Like, we got no idea what's even under there, but it's potentially a very rich place, right? Especially fossil fuel rich, that's for sure. Gems, whatever have you, right? There's places in Africa, Madagascar, for example. I guess that's not really, I guess that's like off the coast of Africa, mind you, but there's places you'll go, man, and you can just find like rare mineral, rare gemstones, whatever have you, oil, and it's just there. It's just the people there can't exploit it, so there's no value on it, if that makes sense, right? So there's plenty of places. This makes a lot of sense to me.
Like massive deposits, vital for feeding the maws of industry. As we continue to the savannas and tropical regions of Africa, things get better, though the drop in temperature causes mass deforestation and drought following the Armageddon, and has scoured the landscape. This area would be home to massive amounts of refugees, fleeing from the war-torn north and the arid south. And while many would die from disease, famine, and drought, especially following the collapse of Lake Victoria, eventually populations may settle, and this could be a fairly peaceful land well removed from the war.
All things considered.
Eruska may have other plans. Under bleaker circumstances, the areas of Central Africa, like the rainforests in Congo, could be a prime testing ground for Eruska,
Oh God.
attempting to revitalize the jungles of yore with the technologic and biological manipulation, creating new life in this hostile world. A breeding ground.
But Yoruska, what does that mean? What are they doing though?
Artificial intelligence and quickly mutating biology.
Oh no.
One where new species emerge not in centuries or millennia, but in days, weeks, and months. The
Don't see how that could go wrong.
Africa would be similar to that of Eastern Europe and the central areas of North America, that being agricultural lands, now frigid and dry, dusty expanses devoid of life, though spared from the harshest of weather by its proximity to the equator. This region's relative industrialization in comparison to the rest of Africa could also continue into the future and this setting, where it could act as a well-removed industrial zone, completely automated and free from the burden of sustaining a human population.
Damn.
Creating machines for its own purposes or for that of Yoruska.
Completely automated is crazy, but yeah, it makes sense.
South, far across the expansive void of the oceans lies our next continent, one that has gained strategic importance since the beginning of the war: Antarctica.
Okay.
The expanses of Antarctica see a massive icing.
Obviously, the Arctic, North and South Poles, I'll even say, right? Again, another place that modern day has not really been exploited, and very, very resource rich. If you have the ability to actually get to those resources, of course, and obviously very critical for a nation's defense, as we're seeing modern day, right? Very, very critical. The quickest way, obviously, to get from, let's say, the US to Russia, right? It's not to go around the fucking world, it's to go over the North Pole, right? So it's just, especially if you're sending missiles or maybe troops, whatever have you, if you have the ability to traverse up there, yeah, that's how you do it. It's quickest by far.
The expanses of Antarctica see a
just don't stay too long, that's all.
During the nuclear winter, stretching far outwards to continents such as South America, and seasonally stretching its frigid embrace toward New Zealand and Australia. Like the Sahara for Africa, this area's remoteness and lack of exploitation in the centuries before make it a vast resource deposit ripe for harvesting.
Yeah.
If those who dare can survive through an even harsher frozen climate.
What about all the penguins?
While Europa may have the easiest claims to such lands with its proximity in South America, their doctrines make it the most difficult for them to adapt.
Right.
Primarily, this is due to their reluctance or inability to use highly sophisticated artificial intelligence like Yoruska and Eurasia, and their maladaptive biology making the land inhospitable to them. However, Europa could have several approaches for such a scenario.
Is that Frostpunk?
First being sheer brute force, utilizing concepts such as penal colonies supported by their massive surplus populations as a way of solving two issues at once: homeland turmoil and securing resources for the conflict. Alternatively, as we see with the gunhead units, Europa does have skills in adapting its more mundane robotic entities for performing various tasks, and such could be the case with Antarctica. Europa utilizing massive amounts of retrofitted robots and drones to scour and mine the land for resources. Lastly, the massive land carriers of Europa, the Titans, could play a role here. Once again modified and adapted, vast fleets of mining ships heading to and
That's a
from
Frostpunk
this
dreadnought,
hell.
no?
A potentially preferable job over being sent to the conflict zones. That being if these Titans are not fully automated. For Yoruska and Eurasia, their claim to such a land becomes more difficult, with no permanent land bridges to the continent. Though, they make up for this with their willingness to bend both technology and biology to adapt. Yoruska relies upon its bespoke creations designed to crack both ice and stone, and forcibly adapts it to the harsh conditions of the Antarctic. Monstrosities constructed to be amphibious could be pivotal, able to swim beneath the expanse of ice to arrive at massive mined underground caverns beneath them, circumventing turmoil on the surface and arriving directly at the resource-rich continent they wish to harvest. Eurasia's approach is the most permanent of all the factions, utilizing their advanced technology to create installations
set up a base.
creating an entirely automated supply chain to both strip the resources out of the land, process them, and send them off to the factories of war.
Based.
Considering the strategic importance of Antarctica, this area could be one massive conflict zone, though fought between the machines of industry as opposed to those of war, freezing those who fail in the ever-expanding ice, mementos to history only to be harvested later by the next wave of those sent to exploit the land. While the frozen expanse of Antarctica holds immense possibilities, especially when it comes to automated industries, our next continent is the largest and contains all the major factions, that being Asia.
Okay.
Asia, the largest and most geographically diverse continent with roots far into the past, home to many peoples and cultures, and the primary
Yeah, I'd assume
home
everyone,
for Eurasia.
even Europa, obviously, would have like probably like some treaty ports or colonies or some nations that would have sided with them in a way, right? So it's going to be interesting to see like what the actual map of Asia looks. I know we got like a brief glimpse before there, but going to be interested to see what this looks like.
Home to many peoples and cultures, and the primary home for the Eurasian superpower. While little is known about Eurasia, the propaganda pieces we have thus far suggest an advanced society not only surviving into the future of this Armageddon, but prospering.
God damn.
Though such media should be taken with a grain of salt.
Propaganda,
As
of course.
Eurasia, while having bountiful surpluses of food, lacks space to house its growing population. This core concept, Eurasia lacking space and not food, is pivotal for understanding the state of Asia, and to some degree the world. That even with Eurasia's advanced technology, it is not a question of food or water, but that of habitation. That they can make the crops grow faster, they can make them grow more bountiful, they can clean and recycle the water, but they can't, or won't, create enough space for humans to live. Such practices can be seen echoed from the little we do know about Mongolia from Lordos. In his homeland, humans were grown in artificial cycles.
What the fuck?
Manpower resource cultivated for war or other darker practices.
I see.
Carefully managed, called when in surplus, fed when scarce. While this practice undoubtedly has changed since the war's breakout, its mirroring may be present across all of Eurasia's homefront and Eureska's Asia holdings. Starting in East Asia and working our way westward, one of the areas we know of is Kowloon, a district of Hong Kong, displayed in our assets. Interestingly, either this city was spared from a direct nuclear attack,
cyber flesh market,
countermeasures to defend itself, or lastly was
so Hong Kong is kind of like the new Night City almost, it looks like, or at least kind of sounds like. Holy shit.
Nuclear attack, it had countermeasures to defend itself, or lastly
2067
built over the ruins of before.
Almost there too, honestly.
Whatever the method, Hong Kong and its greater areas undoubtedly serve as a major population center for the entire region. A beacon against the desolate background, though carefully controlled and managed, the tale of Lordos mirrored. In the far northern reaches of East Asia, that being the Koreas, Japan, and Eastern Russia.
So Japan is part of Eureska here.
Where the lands and oceans devoured by frost and ice. Japan itself would be hit hard, its massive populations already requiring the heavy import of food and relying on now devastated fisheries.
Yeah.
At some point in time, it does seem that Japan flipped allegiances, perhaps due to needing food, the logistical issues of being aligned with a faction so far away, or capitulating to an invading Eurasia. This is primarily supported by two items. First, that cyborg components partially come from a Japanese company,
I was gonna say
Biomedical, and that there are Japanese Type 10 main battle tanks within the halls of European Titans.
I was gonna say, right, especially on that Eureskan, I guess, kind of like mech unit that we saw earlier there. A lot of Asian, a lot of Japanese symbols, right? So and to me, it kind of looked Japanese almost in a way. So I'm assuming, right, probably not a lot of the higher tech components, but being in their proximity to Eurasia there, and obviously Eurasia being the top runner, I guess, for cyberware parts, whatever have you in that regard. I'd assume Japan probably has a little bit of that as well, or at least has that know-how to a certain extent, and so they're able to give that to the Eruskans and obviously amp them up a little bit too. And clearly, biomedical facilities, clearly still a very smart, very innovative people, let's say.
Japanese Type 10 main battle tanks within the halls of European Titans. Alternatively, with Zaikatsu being a corporation, it merely may have continued existing past the desolation of Japan, the island gone silent after nuclear war, its many centralized industries a convenient target.
I see.
Though, with its advanced technological ruins, it would make for a fantastic black site for Eurasia, desolated and hard to reach, but home to great industrial facilities gone silent, ready for repurposing. Heading now to the southeastern areas of Asia, we have Indochina and the many isles around the South China Sea. Once acting as a major food source for Asia, these locations would be devastated by the nuclear war and the preceding artificial winter, as they would quickly feel the effects of the colder temperatures and the loss of sunlight, with the
they'd be
failure
fucked.
of crops. Famine would be widespread, causing a mass refugee crisis as the people flock to warmer areas in search of food, and the areas like Indonesia will become massively overpopulated. Considering Eurasia's seemingly picky nature in regards to places it inhabits, it may let many of the areas around its cities fall into anarchy or lesser states on purpose, letting its few but magnificent cities stand as beacons against the darkness. Locations of myth and legend, refugees tell it to each other, providing a steady source of new candidates to become cyborgs for Eurasia's army and test subjects for Eruska. While the current times may not feel this way, it's hard to imagine Eurasia without the inclusion of India, it being a massive geopolitical powerhouse.
Yeah, no doubt.
In a way, it reflects Asia itself, a plethora of geographically distinct locations and many cultures. And if we are to take what we know thus far about Eurasia, India itself may be reduced only to a few cities, if not only one.
Jesus.
Letting much of the landscape serve ancillary purposes or fall to ruin. Location-wise,
considering it's one of obviously the most heavily populated places in the world today, knowing that there's only one city now, it could be a mega city, right? But you're talking about, obviously nowadays, like what, 1.6 billion people living in India, something like that, right? Yeah, so just crazy to think that it's reduced entirely to like basically nothing now. Holy shit.
One of the most important westward locations for Eurasia, acting as a major manufacturing hub for the west, as opposed to the coasts of China for the east. Additionally, the major mountainous regions westward act as a defensive barrier for encroaching Europeans, as their invasion into Central Asia was pivotal to the start of the war gone hot. In this scenario, a manufacturing hub like New Delhi could be the primary western city, protected by several mountain ranges and able to produce for the entire Western Front. Moving north into the Himalayas and Central Asia, these areas become even more remote than before, with the mountains becoming colder and bleaker and receiving less rainfall, starving the many rivers that flow from them. In the lower plains of Central Asia, the many Stan countries would do poorly during the start of the war if they still maintained their status as breadbaskets of Asia.
Right.
Entire crops failing as temperatures grow frigid,
Be cold as
removed
fuck
from any residual heat of the oceans.
Yeah.
The Caspian Sea here could freeze and diminish in size, providing an attack vector for Europa. Such circumstances would mean the Great Plains of Kazakhstan would be a giant conflict zone, a great expanse of trenches and craters as Europa seeks to circumvent the defensive mountainous regions of the Middle East or hit deeper parts of Eruska from the south. For the vast expanse of Russia stretching from the Urals to the Pacific, the climate here has suffered greatly now, becoming much more Arctic than that of a taiga or tundra.
Right.
Though, like Antarctica and Africa, the great expanse here has plenty to offer for resources, making up for the hostile climate. However, considering the Cold War leading up to the conflict, the resources here may have already been exploited heavily, being both the easiest and cheapest to extract,
That makes sense.
A hidden resource, however, might be the vast reserves of lumber, quickly preserved by falling snow and ash, able to be reclaimed from the ice and snow that entomb them.
True.
The frozen climate preserving what was lost. This region is assuredly under control of Eruska, as even Mongolia.
But then again, how useful? I mean, I guess besides, obviously heat source, whatever have you, right? I'm not really too certain what lumber would be outwardly used for, and if it'd be worth exporting lumber to other parts of the world, given how hard it is to do, right? I'm assuming only like mainstream industries would be utilizing lumber and that, like, right? Because of just how rare and probably hard it is to get nowadays, right?
This region is assuredly under control of Eruska, as even Mongolia has their influence. Though, considering its sparse populations, it's hard to see this area becoming any more livable far into the post-apocalypse.
Right.
Additionally, this land's true value may be in its remoteness, allowing for a great deal of control, and by extension, provides Eruska an area to conduct experiments without excessive external variables. Lastly, as a conflict zone, the far northern reaches could be an attack or defense vector, with the Arctic Ocean frozen over, allowing for the passage of vehicles and troops from either the Russian or Canadian side.
Yeah.
Heading now to our last parts of Asia, the Middle East and East, we have our first permanent European presence, along with numerous conflict zones. Europa's presence in Asia is that
Saudi Arabia is fucking on fire,
supplying the Merkava battle tank and other weapons to the cause.
Okay.
It is from here that the attacks eastward into Eurasia started, seeking the vast resource beds of Arabia, Central Asia, and the Middle East. During the war's outbreak, these areas were the sites of mass nuclear strikes, meant to blunt both the invading and defending forces, and have never recovered since, as the war rages on. The conflict zones here reside upon terrain lines, that being the westward edges of Iran and moving northward to the Caspian Sea. Additionally, conflict zones are in northeastern Turkey and the South Caucasus, with Europa either holding the flank from Eruska in the north or invading their lands from there.
Up by like Georgia area.
The Arabian Peninsula is a highly contested war zone, its deep sands hiding vast mineral wealth, though requiring extensive work and stability to harvest. This being well known, it is the subject of invasions via Africa by Eruska, by air from Eurasia, and the armies of the megacity Jerusalem by land.
God damn.
The constant fighting over this
Saudi Arabia is just a fucking cesspit, dude.
A giant scrapyard of sand and metal.
Yeah.
Decades of attempted exploitation, sundered by opposition.
Jeez.
Altogether, this paints the Asias much like it deserves. A great expanse of diverse locations, harboring many factions and plentiful conflict zones. And this has
many
only
conflict
scratched
zones.
The surface of possibilities. But now, we turn our attention to something entirely absent within any lore. Something completely unknown and undiscussed.
Okay.
Australia.
Oh no.
The island of Australia.
Down under.
Home to a vast
Tell me it's like Mad Max, dude. I'd love that so much.
This continent creates an interesting dilemma.
It'd probably be cold as fuck,
countries
though.
across the world merge into global superpowers, with Australia being sparsely populated, but with vast untapped resources. Its main issue being its proximity to Eurasia. The recent history between mainland Asia and Australia could provide insights on this continent's fate, that being one of capital investment, turning much of the land into corporate holdings of Eurasia, willing to pay for the rights of Australia's vast mineral wealth. Prior to the war's outbreak, Australia may have been a fairly neutral entity, culturally aligned with the West, but heavily invested in by Eurasian businesses.
That makes sense.
In a way, it wanted to keep its autonomy, wealth, and to stay out of the global conflict.
Not happening.
Though, this neutrality was abused. Eurasia turned the screws tighter and tighter until the money Eurasia's industry provided was too pivotal to the Australian economy.
Yeah.
Making them a vassal in all but name.
It's literally what the Chinese are doing nowadays, for Christ's sakes. And apparently, like, I don't know if you guys have heard of the deal that went through here in Canada, but literally, like, that is literally what they do nowadays, right? They stranglehold economies. They get their foot in the door, undercut their market by undercut the market they're going into by such a drastic margin that businesses have to shut down, and then eventually you are reliant upon Chinese companies for those goods, for those services. They're pivotal now to your economy, and you can't get rid of them, right? They do this, they attempt to do this everywhere they go, because the second they do that, they own your economy, right? They decide, right? Not you. Yeah, ridiculous that, even knowing that, people fucking applaud that shit because, orange man bad kind of thing, but fuck me, it's dumb. It's actually dumb.
Australian economy, making them a vassal in all but name. With the war's outbreak, Australia would generally not be a candidate for mass nuclear strikes, though
obviously I don't believe that, but that's the thought process of a lot of people, sadly.
This creates a slight issue, as currently Australia's massive population hubs are also these logistical centers, massive ports to both send and receive goods. Considering the sprawling nature of the outback, and that resource harvesting would be decentralized, the best option to cripple Eurasia's holdings here would be the complete obliteration of these port cities, eliminating Australia from the global stage for decades to come. For the survivors of the devastation, life would be hard.
Yeah.
Though, for those who endure, they are privy to what is likely Eden when it comes to the end times. A vast land well removed from the conflict, with only small areas of ruin when compared to its size, with areas outside of the now even more hellish outback barely livable, though slightly cooler. For Eurasia's holdings in the outback and other resource-rich areas, they likely have a variety of different fates, dependent upon Eurasia. Considering the sheer amount of ruin brought to the ports, Eurasia may see Australia as a later project, or something entirely beyond reclaiming. Too big of a drain on the war effort for consideration. Alternatively, Eurasia may repair Australia into what it was before for them, a resource colony, now with the middleman cut out. A fully automated production hub, either producing goods locally or shipping resources back to Eurasia's cities, though the chaotic seas of Indonesia may harbor avid pirates. The last option fulfills an important void for Eurasia.
I wonder who's committing piracy nowadays, damn.
That being Australia is one of Eurasia's most important well-hidden secrets, an area to pull the strings of control safely, and to more importantly, reclaim the skies that were sundered. Australia is home to Eurasia's space reclamation program.
Oh shit.
Deep in the desolate outback, keeping the low orbital rings free of debris for polar orbits, allowing the installations above Australia and Asia to operate safely and away from the prying eyes and knowledge of Europa.
Obviously speculation, but that would make sense.
As we end the Australia section, it's important to keep in mind this is all theory and conjecture.
Yeah.
Only scratching at the surface of possibilities. With one such idea to keep in mind that perhaps what I have said is only half true. Eurasia did have holdings in Australia, though forgotten and forsaken during the first weeks of the war. Artificial intelligences left alone for 40 years, cut off from contact, left only with themselves, their thoughts, and the entire continent. Australia could truly be anything.
Europe, okay.
Europe, a post-nuclear wasteland of sprawling European megacities in the west, organically grown biostructures of Eruska in the east,
Jesus Christ,
and desolate mountains and forests of Scandinavia in the north. It contains the most symbolic fighting between all of the conflict zones, and in a way mirrors the First Global War a century and a half before, though no longer is the space between trenches no man's land, but the very surface, with only the deep underground providing the solace of the trenches, safe from the war above. The battle lines here are three-dimensional, stretching far into the skies and down deep into the earth below, and likely resemble the Iron Curtain, though shifted. As the little we do know about these megacities are their names, such as Hamburg and Bucharest.
Hamburg.
The exact details of this likely massive front line are hazy, though we can use our knowledge of Eruska to help expand upon it. That being that Eruska is comprised of the Slavic states and Africa, thus putting Poland under their umbrella. With that in mind, we can theorize that this line stretches from the German-Polish border, heading southeast along the Carpathian Mountains before straddling the border between Romania and Ukraine.
Right.
From the tale of Lordos, areas between the factions were likely a gray zone, a DMZ of relative lawlessness, where both sides would fight proxy battles before the war's outbreak. When the bombs dropped
Some
and
mercs
both
and shit
sides
in
of this
there.
line were obliterated, the fighting likely resumed here and has not moved much since.
Yeah.
Echoing the stagnant lines of the Great War, the blood of thousands for the transfer of meters. While the motivations of each side are unknown, it is likely that the forces here are mostly symbolic. Eruska performing the task the Iron Curtain was always meant to perform, providing a massive protective barrier for Moscow. While for Europa, it is to stop any encroaching Eruskans on their eastern industrial hubs and population centers, helping to supply the more important conflicts in the Middle East. The core premise here, that both sides are here for defense, not for offense.
I see.
This theory is supported by the war for resources.
So the idea that, like, yeah, like resources above all, right? Like, it doesn't serve them any purpose to push into their mainland territories because the cost and what they're going to get out of it is just simply not worth it. These are already areas that are already ruins or have already been exploited for literally everything, all they're worth, right? So I could absolutely see that. It doesn't really make much sense to just go in there and invade, because for what, you know what I mean? And what's it going to cost you to do that? You're going to be massively disadvantaged if you're able to even pull that off, right?
This theory is supported by the war for resources, and long has the old world been stripped bare, relying upon its old imperial habits to satisfy their needs once more. With Eurasia being occupied defensively in the Middle East and offensively in the Western Americas, it falls upon Eruska to be the aggressor here, and as we have learned thus far, Eruska has different designs, playing for the long game as opposed to temporary or symbolic conquests.
Right.
Shifting south to the Mediterranean, this once again brings up our discussions from Africa. That being the siege status and the conflict zones here between Europa and Eruska. The fighting here is likely much more ferocious than the fairly static eastern lines, primarily due to the rich deposits below the Sahara and the long coast of northern Africa, nigh impossible to defend its entirety. This in turn creates not a conflict zone, but an ever-changing massive skirmish, unknown whether friend or foe is ahead or behind. Though, if the Mediterranean is intact, this would likely create a pivotal conflict area around Morocco and Algeria, as told by Lordos. Heading north to the British Isles, these serve as a series of vital megacities, being well removed from the front lines. Its production limited by both requiring the massive import and export of goods, straining its existing connections to Europe. In such a scenario, a few possibilities exist. The first of these being the damming of the English Channel, draining the lands in between for the facilitation of goods between Britain and mainland Europe.
Interesting.
If this isn't feasible, a smaller megastructure could be used. A tidal bridge across the channel, utilizing the ebbs and flows of the ocean to power industry, while providing a colossal causeway for supplies to be sent to and from the mainland.
I wonder if it's still frozen up there. Maybe not.
The simplest and most tried and true method would be utilizing the great depths beneath Europe and Britain, similar to the underground railways already being utilized in the current day. Turning our attention toward Eruska and the east, along with Scandinavia.
Yeah, because don't they have like a railway from like Britain to France, or am I fucked up there? I thought they had something like that. Maybe I'm wrong, but like, yeah, or they have something like conceptualized at least like that, where they want to get France and the UK basically hooked up. But I don't know if that ever came to fruition, or if they ever have any plans to continue that. So somebody let me know on that. Actually, I'd be kind of interested.
Change in scenery is obscene. Long removed are the structures of yore, now replaced by Eruska's growing cities, treating each urban center as a crop to cultivate and harvest, with only the structure of government and authority persistent. It is in this that we see Ruska's influence by nature, taking inspiration from its many cycles, understanding that to survive this new world, it is done by adapting quickly, clearing out the old growth with a cleansing fire so that the new can grow unhindered. This makes their lands an ever-changing landscape of sprouting buildings and people, each designed to fulfill a specific purpose, grown to maturity before being harvested.
Jesus.
This adaptation
sounds awful, to be honest with you.
Eastern Europe's survival, as the lands here would be hit hard by the nuclear winter, turning much of the landscape into a permafrost, choking the once vital breadbasket.
So it's more out of necessity than want, I guess.
Would be hit as hard as the far north. For Scandinavia, it would only get worse.
Oh, they're fucked.
Despite being its natural resources, as now its climate is completely Arctic, destroying the semblance of any growing season. Additionally, the fisheries it has relied upon in the past are now poisoned by radioactive ash. However, this could turn the region into a fairly interesting conflict zone, with the vast mountain ranges and frozen forests of the land being a stark contrast to the industrial hellscapes and megacities of Europe, requiring diverse adaptations from both Eruska and Europa to gain the advantage. In summary, Europe is still the old world it once was, locked in a great world war where the battle lines move gradually, and where to achieve success, it must not look inwards, but outwards, utilizing its rich tapestry of imperial ambitions to fulfill its resource needs.
That makes sense.
In the East, a new dogma arises, one not of advancement, but regression.
Oh yeah?
Returning humanity back to its roots, one of adaptation and evolution, seeking not to win the war from brute force, but longevity.
Yeah.
North America, the New World. In a way, it has escaped the fate of Europe, that being trapped in the echoes of its past, twisted by the technology of today. For America, it instead is...
I'm going to be interested to see how America fared here, right? Because obviously I'm sure they were on the ass end receiving of a lot of nukes. But that being said, they don't really share a border with any of the other major factions, right? So besides obviously the far north, right? And I guess the Bering Strait now as well. So it'd be interesting to see whether or not they... whether there's any like actual conflict zones, or whether North America as a whole is kind of like on its own, mostly dealing with internal strife because of mass overpopulation and the fact that everything is fucking ruined, right?
By the technology of today. For America, it instead is living in its own new hell.
Yeah, okay.
Into utter oblivion.
Yeah.
And given no quarter.
Yeah.
For to leave this land alone is to admit long-term defeat. Something the artificial intelligences of Eurasia and Eruska understand. And so they invaded its western shores, but that was not enough. And over the melee taking place, nuclear arrows rained overhead, scouring the landscapes from west to east, turning the urbanized war machine that is American Europa into ash. Though, this outcome was always clear to the European AIs, and so it hardened itself against such a strike. It built deep into the earth, and
see there, he just said AI. So is it an AI or is it a VI? Because there is definitely a difference, and I don't think they should be used interchangeably, right? So I'm genuinely confused now. Is it a self-learning AI, an adaptive AI, or is it a VI that already has pre-programming and is simply just acting upon that pre-programming? You know, somebody let me know a little bit more specifically, because now he's using the word AI, right? So I'm just a little confused on that, that's all.
Itself against such a strike. It built deep into the earth, and it cast aside the ways of old. No longer would its citizens eat the grains of the earth, but the manufactured proteins of its underground factories. And so, 40 years after the nukes first fell, American Europa has recovered, its industries churning and pushing against the Eurasian interlopers upon the west coast. But far to the north...
So they're still on the west coast. They didn't get pushed off.
So
okay.
We turn our attention there. The Great White North. now an endless expanse of ice and snow,
Yep.
opening up new avenues across the world.
Not much has changed.
For while devastation and death are the first things that come to mind with nuclear war, it also creates and changes, connecting the landmasses of Asia, Europe, and North America by the now permanently frozen Arctic. While crossing such expanses would be precarious, the vast mineral wealth of the lands of Alaska, northern Canada, and Greenland may be very well worth the trip, along with the value installations here would hold for striking over the North Pole or deep into Europa. For this reason, much like Northern Africa, this entire far north, from Bering Strait to Fram Strait, is a massive area of skirmishes and sporadic conflicts. Its distance away from the industrial centers of all factions, along with its sheer vastness, stopping any persistent battle lines, but also too important to risk ignoring and losing control of. Journeying back to the center of North America from our time in the Great White, much has changed since the outbreak of the war. The entirety of the West Coast is now one massive conflict zone. And from these shores, Eurasia projects its power into the interior.
The entirety of the West Coast? Canada and
gray zone
America, I'm assuming?
The Great Plains and stretching far into the east.
God damn.
This land has become a desolate wasteland of endless scrapyards and ruins. A victim of the nuclear strikes 40 years ago, never to be rebuilt. Though the catacombs below likely house valuable facilities waiting to be reclaimed. In a way, these forsaken lands protect the populated East, the cornerstone of Europa's North American operations and production, sending out titans full of troops across the continent to bring war against the interlopers. Though many will not even reach their destination, these massive gray zones are home to threats outside of just Eurasia, such as opportunistic scavengers and rogue factions, seeking the supplies they need to survive in this brutal forever winter.
So there's plenty of like individual survivor scav groups out there as well, that obviously have their own motivations, that have their own wants, obviously their own needs, right, as a society. So I wonder if like these micro societies kind of exist, or if they're known about by the greater factions as a whole and kind of just like allowed to be there. You know what I mean? Somebody let me know. I'm assuming a lot of them probably are under board. They probably, you know, they're operating by obviously less than legal means for the majority of them.
They need to survive in this brutal forever winter.
What does less than legal mean in this world? Well, it's up for you to decide.
America, these islands would be plagued with a shifting climate and inconsistent weather, destroying any existing agriculture. Ultimately, their fate would be up to Europa. It depends upon the use of navies in the setting, with these numerous islands being important warm waters for naval bases, but outside of that are too small to warrant absorption and development. In this instance, the likely scenarios for these islands are first being that of an isolated society living within their own world, well removed from the conflict. Alternatively, if their ability to be self-sufficient never materializes, these islands could be a haven for pirates, mercenaries, and refugees seeking to navigate past European-controlled lands and into or out of the American interior via the Gulf, acting more of a way station and hub than a self-sustaining society.
That would make sense.
From here, they could also head west into the Central Americas, this vast stretch of relatively thin land having two potential fates. The first being the total occupation by that of Eurasia, who during planning of its invasion of the Western Americas understood this land's logistical significance, moving goods between the Americas and the Atlantic and Pacific. Emphasis would have been placed on either securing the canal or ensuring its destruction, preventing naval reinforcements from the east. If Eurasia secured this land for the decades to come, it likely would become a vast logistical hub of their own, coordinating efforts between both the Americas, though the invasion of this land predated the nuclear element of the war, which ties into its alternative fate, that being its complete annihilation in the name of security. Europa's command in the hours leading up to the nuclear Armageddon.
That would make sense. I mean, again, if the enemy owns it, you know shit's about to warm up in a really fucking bad way. Asset deny your enemy. That makes complete sense. Yeah, asset deny your enemy. You're not going to allow that to fall into enemy hands, and decades later, it's going to be a fucking hot spot for enemy activity. No. And I could see an AI absolutely making that decision, just like, fuck it. You know, better no one has it than the enemy has it, right? Because that's what you have to worry about, right? Holy shit. Brutal, though.
Europa's command in the hours leading up to the nuclear Armageddon shifted its parameters and arithmetic, understanding that any alternative is better than your reaching control of Central America.
Exactly, yeah.
And thus, the most devastating of strikes was authorized against the land: the use of salted bombs.
Jeez.
These bombs are not meant to destroy armies or infrastructure, but the very earth itself. Salted nukes designed to poison the soil, to render the land uninhabitable for generations. Scorched earth denial on a continental scale.
Yeah, that's like the ultimate fuck you, isn't it? Jeez.
If it could not keep its connection to South America secure, it would rather see it burned. And so South America, Neo-Brazil, stands alone. South America, an oppressed land still haunted by its colonial past, always at the edge of escape before being dragged back under, suffocated by the greed and ambition of others. In the years leading up to the war, this was done at the behest of Europa, absorbed into its sprawling superpower as a network of vassal states and territories.
That makes sense.
Subject to rule, but given no voice. Exploited for its resources, and granted only the security and the oppression of its new colonizers. As the centerpiece of Europa's holdings in the southern hemisphere,
Argentina and I think Chile are by themselves down there.
Was forged, rooted in the deep heart of South America, the Amazon. But in this new era, industrial automation was the mandate. The forests were harvested, the rivers harnessed. Steel and smoke replaced the green and the rain, and a new name was given to the land: Neo-Brazil.
Neo-Brazil,
But before we focus on the heart of South America, we must first look north to the ruins of Colombia and the fate of its coasts.
Okay.
For the northern coasts of South America, lands once dotted with trade hubs and bustling ports, it is difficult to say exactly how the factions approached them. On one hand, there was a desire to extract resources and funnel them back to their manufacturing centers.
That makes sense.
But on the other, the imperative to deny the enemy the very same infrastructure. With that,
it's all about asset
both
denial.
factions may have chosen annihilation, erasing the coastline with fire during the nuclear launches of the war. What remains are hollow shells of port cities, crumbling ruins that stand in silence against the crashing waves of a dead ocean. And worse still, if salted bombs were unleashed upon Panama, their toxic spread would likely have poisoned these shores as well, rendering it not only desolate, but irradiated.
And of course, when you're talking about South America, Central America, using salted bombs there, obviously the spread is hitting the ocean too, which is probably such a big reason why the oceans in those areas are so dead, man. Like, that's diabolical, I have to say. Like, fuck, what mass ecological disaster this must be.
Rendering it not only desolate, but
I don't think it ever comes back, to be honest.
Death coming to all those
not
who
at this
dare
rate.
brave the land. A scar now carved deep into the continent, never to truly heal. And for this, Neo-Brazil has had to stand alone, cut off from its northern counterpart, locked in a prison without a guard. The only question now is whether it will escape that prison, or has it come to call it home? Or perhaps it's simply waiting for a new warden.
Interesting.
Neo-Brazil, the heart of South America, stretching from the coasts of Ecuador and Peru to the far eastern shores of Brazil. A massive industrial hellscape.
Or is that Peru down there, not Chile?
The ruin of the Amazon,
I need to look at a map again.
plunging deep into the earth to extract its very flesh.
I thought Peru was north,
Much like Los
South America.
Angeles, this place is now a war zone. Eurasia, driven by its own colonial ambition, seek to claim the land for their own gain. but the land is hostile to their very presence. The Andes Mountains serving as a natural bulwark, a shield that protects New Brazil from this western incursion. Their sheer elevation and brutal terrain make a direct invasion via the coastlines of Peru and Chile unsound, even if the resources there are vast. And so, only a few possible routes exist. The most direct would be a bridgehead in Ecuador, an attempt to bypass the worst of the Andes and strike into the heart of Neo Brazil.
Right.
But such a maneuver would be suicide, exposed to Europa's full retaliation and easily targeted by bombardment. No, that would not work.
No.
Eurasia's invasion of South America was never going to be easy. The terrain alone won't allow it. This is a war of attrition, slow, grinding, and eternal. Eurasia holds the lucrative lowlands of Chile and Peru, but they do so under the constant ire of Neo Brazil's mountain guns.
I see.
Artillery duels echo across
Holy
valleys.
shit.
Bombers dance through poisoned skies. Neither side dares to step fully into the other's realm.
Oh my god.
And both have accepted the deadlock as a new status quo. And that continues along the coast until we reach the lands reclaimed by ice. Patagonia and the southern tip of the Americas. The perhaps last great expanses of grazing land upon the earth before the nuclear war.
Okay.
Now frozen and barren.
Yeah.
A gray zone never fully claimed by any faction. Too
Okay.
far, too cold, and too remote. Though, that does not spare it from exploitation, but it does not make it easy. The fights here are waged not by armies, but by scavengers, mercenaries, and Eurasian and European detachments. Surveyors seeking plunder beneath what were once lush fields of grass.
So this is like the new, like, well, I know obviously the war got very, very hot, but this is like the new, like, if you will, Cold War area, right? Where countries or factions are sending like PMC groups, surveying teams in to kind of see what they can get, what the viability of the land would be. And it's also just a place where it looks like a lot of refugee scavenger groups, sub-factions, if you will, have made their home there because it's probably a lot more cut off from these major factions for that reason. That makes a lot of sense.
Seeking plunder beneath what were once lush fields of grass. And as we turn from the conflicts of Patagonia to the seas of the east and south, a new highway emerges. One between Cape Horn and the Antarctic. Not one of ships of the sea, but ships of the land. Traversing the frozen roads south toward the untapped bounty of the Antarctic, providing Neo Brazil a path toward its own freedom, a chance of becoming its own warden, removed from the oppression of old Europa, and becoming perhaps its own colonizer, not by conquering others, but by conquering nature itself. The continent.
So Brazil's got the potential to kind of break off on its own.
Shrouded in mystery. Echoes of the great silence brought on by nuclear Armageddon. What we've uncovered here is only a reflection cast against the radioactive ice, twisted and refracted, obscuring the truths of the land. But in that reflection, meaning can still be found. That Europa clings to the past and the ways of yore. That Eurasia is the sins of our present. Technological propaganda and corporate exploitation made manifest. And that Euruska, they look to the future, and all they see is war.
God damn.
That's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
Wow. Holy shit. I have to say, guys, that was a pretty awesome video. And coming from a place of not even knowing what Forever Winter is, obviously seems like a game, obviously, right? I see there's actually some gameplay here. But yeah, I never knew anything about it. Seems like a very interesting world, very diverse, post-apocalyptic with a little bit of, like, I guess, alt history, with a little bit of, I guess like, what would you call it? dark future despotism. Oh my god, I can't say the word. You guys know what I mean though. Definitely seems like it's a very unique environment, not something I've heard of before, and I'd like to learn a little bit more about it. I guess like a pre-summary, and I guess that's almost part of like the mystery of Forever Winter, is that you don't really know how the world got there. You kind of do, but you don't know everything. You don't really know exactly everything tech-wise that they were working with. You know, there's a lot of stuff that's kind of like up in the air and that you're supposed to figure out or kind of interpret for yourself. It kind of seems like, right? Obviously, I don't know everything, and this was my first time actually checking anything out about Forever Winter. So if I was wrong on anything, and I know I had a couple questions there, please do answer those and let me know. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to get anything wrong. I'm not trying to misinterpret anything. Just like a lot of it was like, I guess like misinterpretation with language, whatever have you, AI, VI, whatever have you, right? But yeah, obviously this was a pretty good speculation on the world of Forever Winter. I really enjoyed this video. Kilpo here did a fantastic job. We'll leave a sub right there, of course. Yeah, if you guys enjoyed the reactions, hit that like button, or if you guys enjoyed the reaction, hit that like button, subscribe for more content from me, and of course, leave recommendations down in the comments below. I really appreciate that, guys. A big thank you, of course, to all of our members, all of our Hastati, our Triarii, our Principe, Dagenhart, of course, our Prefects, Hobbit, Andrew, BB, Coon, and Psychotic Duck. Yeah, I appreciate you guys, and yeah, come join the Discord if you're not in it. Appreciate that, guys, and yeah, without any further delay, this has been Centurion, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace, guys.